Ron worked with my dad at A&M Records. They had a really great lasting friendship all the way until now. So we're very happy that Ron is here to share some stories.
Hi, welcome and welcome. My name is Ron. Rich and I were friendly for 48 years. It was an incredible friendship. He came to A&M Records about a year and a half after I got there in early 1974. Within a few months we bonded, went on the road, and we had so many experiences on and off the road, craziness, insanity. I got some music I'm going to play in a moment in the background. I put a medley together of a lot of the music and artists that Richie worked with and a couple others that pertain to the stories I'm going to try to tell over the music. When Rich and I worked for A&M one time, we were in Los Angeles finishing our national meetings. It was the year of the bicentennial, 1976. And he said, well, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go to Fresno, visit my family. What are you doing? I said, I'm going to New York. What else? It was on the heel of a 4 or 5 day weekend. He said, why don't you come to Fresno? So I went to Fresno, met his mom and dad, Sam and Rose, who were wonderful. And in the course of that wonderful weekend, we went to Yosemite, did a lot. I became an honorary Armenian. From then on, I wasn't Ron Farber, I was Farberian. Rich and I had some marvelous times, and in the background is Miles Davis, of course, if some of you may know. So What is the track from Kinda Blue. Rich worked with Miles, and if you want to see some great stories about Rich telling about Miles, go to the website. Dale has put together some marvelous video on Rich a couple of years ago where he just talks about it and tells it like only he could. Rich would visit me frequently in Los Angeles, and in the course of that, after many years, he decided to bring me pizza one time. Frozen pizza from New York, like I loved it. From there on, any other visitor, any guest, family or friend, hey, I'll be a good host, but you've got to bring me pizza. This is a group that Rich discovered, Santana. And the story is it took 3 or 4 visits from the people at Columbia, New York, before they were willing to sign him. The first couple of scouts didn't hear and see what Richie knew was a hit act. And he worked with everybody, from even Lawrence Welk, which he had stories about, which I can't do, and I can't do Rich's voices, to this guy. Remember Andy Williams? #1 TV show, The Sweater? He came to San Francisco right after the Summer of Love and visited the Columbia Records office where Rich worked, as did others, going around asking anybody if they had marijuana, weed, grass. Mr. Straight, with a little accountant following him, said, your image, your image. So the joke was the next day, Moon River gets high, Moon River gets high. Andy Williams had to score grass. And the funny thing is, Moon River became his signature song. He never had a hit with it. It was his TV show, but he never had a hit single with it. In the background, Janis Joplin. Richie knew her, and a great story, which Kevin knows. They were at a meeting in the Caribbean with Columbia Records, with some of the recording artists, and also with all the suits from the record company. One of whom was an intimidating guy and was alone with Rich and Janis in an elevator in the hotel. And he tries to do a number. He goes, Rich, do you know Janis? She lives in your city. To which Miss Joplin says, know him? He's the best effing lover in all of San Francisco. The suit cringed, it went crazy, didn't know how to handle it, ran out. Rich turned to her and said, you've never been together. She says, yeah, but that schmuck didn't know it, and look what it did. True story. Rich had 1,000 of them. A few of them I was with him before. The group we work with, and it's playing now, if you can hear it, is Mountain. And we actually have Corky Lang, the sole survivor of the group, in the house today. Legendary hard rock act, Rich worked a lot with. Great story though. After Mountain, when Felix Pappalardi left, Jack Bruce, the guy from Cream, the great Scottish bass player, replaced him. He even gave Kevin some bass lessons. They were in a private plane going to a gig once, a small thing, and suddenly there's a stench. So Bruce says, I let one go. So Jack Bruce says, I farted. In the back, Leslie West says, it smells like your shit it. Rich worked a lot with The Who, became very friendly with Keith Moon and Pete Townsend, and I was privileged enough to be in the room with him with them a couple times. One of the best stories is Mountain toured England opening for The Who. And when they did, Richie was not getting messages at the hotel. There were no cell phones yet. This is the 1970s. This is, how am I checked in? So he goes to the desk. Turns out they took the IAN off the end of his name and made him Ian Toto. He was registered as Ian Toto. So Leslie, of course, far out, you're an English chap. Ian Toto. And a couple of years later, a year later, he was with them in Los Angeles when Magic Bus came out, that psychedelic cover album. And in coordination with that, the record company or the promoter, because there was a couple tour dates that week, rented this huge psychedelic, magic painted psychedelic bus. It was, and they parked it at Sunset Tower Records. Keith Moon talks to Richie and convinces him to get on board while Keith Moon drove it through West Hollywood. They're lucky he didn't crash or get arrested. Keith Moon took the Magic Bus and Richie by his side. I think many of you that knew Rich realize his commitment and friendship with Peter Frampton. I also knew Peter, but not nearly as well as Richie. Rich did so much for Peter. He just took him under his wing and just made so many things happen for his career. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Peter also spent a few Christmas Eves with Rich and his family. They were that close. This is Joan Armatrading playing in the background. Phenomenal artist, both Richie and I worked with. Only problem is Joan was her own worst enemy. We mutually agreed she was probably the most difficult recording artist we'd ever worked with, Joan Armatrading. As talented as she was unbelievable. I'm with him in the office in New York when a call comes in. It's her manager, who was a milquetoast putz. He's calling from Memphis, Tennessee, where Joan was playing a club that was run by the mob. She went around tearing all the posters out of the club. She didn't like it. Manager says, makes her look like a monster. So Richie, God bless him, only he could say this to her manager. Joan does look like a monster. Tells her manager that. God bless him, Richie could do that. Richie had what you call bank. Another great story is one time when he visited me, I talked him into, instead of renting from the usual car rental places, he went to a place in Los Angeles called Rent a Wreck. They have old cars that have been restored. So we went out to dinner and I saw the car he got. He had a Pimpmobile. This huge, humongous early 70s Cadillac with fur on the dashboard, extra lights, fake jewelry all over. It was hysterical. We drove to a restaurant a mile away and guess what? It never started again. We had to take a cab to get home and he had to get another car. Had so much fun. It was always an incredible experience being with Rich. It was like magic. The background got George Harrison playing. We both worked with George, went on the road with him. I almost supposedly got the whole tour busted at the Watergate Hotel when we were there. If you want to read about it or hear about it, my notes about Richie and experience are on the website. In 1977, June 77, I just come back from going to Europe with Dave Herman, who before he got to be nuts was a Good Morning disc jockey of a friend. Dave went there to interview Ringo, so Rich spent his 40th birthday in Cannes with Dave Herman, Ringo, George, Paul Simon, and their ladies. That was a 40th birthday. A couple weeks later, we're in our office in the city. He's telling me about it. We go to lunch one day. Our office was 57th and Madison. 3 blocks away, there's an East St. Laurent store, very high-end men's shop. Those days, the rigor of attire for the A&M execs, which we were, you wore a very nice shirt, a pair of pressed jeans, and often a pair of Gucci loafers. I loved the East St. Laurent shirts. They were phenomenal. They looked great. Problem was, being on the road with the hotel laundries, collars would fray after about 3 or 4 launderings. So we go in there. There's a place that's so high-end, like a jewelry shop, they have to buzz you in to get in. If you don't look the part, you don't get in the store. So we go in there, it's just Richie on, he looks over, he says, "There's John and Yoko." Yes, it was. John and Yoko standing there, and John is trying on per Yoko in a scratchy voice. He's got this long leather trench coat with epaulets and a little leather cap. And she says, "John, it looks good, John." He looks at it and says, "Yoko, I look like a bloody U-boat captain." We both heard that and broke up. Then Rich cons me to go say hello to Lennon. I said, "What do I say?" "Well, I worked for Capitol Records several years before, and I used that." So I walked over to John. If he was either going to tell me to go F myself or say something, I said, "I had the pleasure of working one of your records." "Really? Which one?" I said, "Sometime in New York City." That was the one that looked like a newspaper headline. "What did you do?" I said, "I was the New York promotion manager for Capitol Records, and I got it played on the radio and worked out things with the record stores for promotions." He looked at me and said, "That album did fabulous in New York. Thank you, thank you." So just then I said, "You got to meet my buddy, Rich. We work together. Both of us know George. And he just came back from spending time in con with George and Ringo, 2 of your mates." Richie comes over, quick introduction. Then I said the line, I always regret it, but Rich always reminded me. I looked at Rich, I said, "Well, we both met George, you met Ringo, now we both met John. You just need Paul and you've got the whole set." Anyway, Rich was unbelievable. I miss him. We were joined at the hip, literally. And again, thank you for coming here. Thanks, Kevin and Dale, for running such a nice shindig in honor of one of the truly, truly great people we've all known. Thank you. Yeah, why don't you step up here? I gotta tell you, Rich was so proud of Kevin. He turned into such a young gentleman, such a great musician, carved a career doing it his way. This kid's like my nephew. I love him.
Thank you so much, Ron. Thanks for all those great stories. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, guys.